In the farthest corner of the Orion Arm, the galaxy had moved on from the memory of mankind. The Thrax Dominion reigned over 1,000 worlds, their banners woven with the arrogance of victory and the certainty of control. They called themselves the inheritors of order, the architects of stability after the collapse of the primitive species that once burned too brightly. In their academies, the word human was used to warn children of ambition unchecked, creatures who tried to master the stars but ended up consuming themselves. To the Thrax, humanity was a closed chapter in the cosmic archive, a warning carved in ash. Caratel, an archivist in one of the Dominion's deep space research vessels, had heard those stories all her life. She never questioned them, not until the day her senses picked up something that shouldn't have existed. A narrow-band pulse, faint but deliberate, repeating once every 37 seconds. At first, she assumed it was mechanical noise or cosmic interference, yet the rhythm persisted, steady as a heartbeat. She traced it to an abandoned sector labeled Sol, a forbidden region long quarantined and erased from public maps. Curiosity, the dangerous human trait her teachers warned about, took hold. Caratel ran spectral analysis, data comparisons, and linguistic decryptions. The result froze her in place. A coded pattern built on base 10 mathematics and prime intervals, a form no other known species used. The encryption key matched fragments from archived Terran transmissions, ancient, corrupted data supposedly purged thousands of cycles ago. Every rational thought told her it was impossible. Yet the pulse continued, faint and stubborn, like a ghost knocking at the door of time. She sent her findings to Central Command. The reply came within minutes. Delete all data, seal your logs, and cease all analysis. The message ended with an official threat of disassembly for treasonous curiosity. That single word, treasonous, told her more than the data itself. Someone already knew. Someone in power feared what she had found. She copied the signal onto a private drive, encrypting it under layers of meaningless research files, and pretended obedience. But in her private quarters, she replayed the pulse again and again. It sounded alive. Across the Dominion, in places of government and control, whispers began to circulate. Old security divisions reactivated dormant protocols, blacklisting coordinates near Sol. The Dominion's internal network quietly altered its historical databases, rewriting the extinction date of humanity for the 4th time in 2 centuries. Yet no one asked why such details mattered. After all, the humans were gone. Everyone knew that. Still, deep in the void, the pulse persisted. On a cold, lifeless moon orbiting a silent planet, dust shifted over the ruins of a forgotten facility. Beneath layers of rock and radiation, something ancient began to hum. Old reactors awoke after millennia of silence. Systems ran diagnostics that hadn't been triggered in ages. Within that darkness, machines remembered names, codes, and voices long thought erased. The Dominion's historians would later debate the exact moment when the myth turned back into reality. Some would say it was when the pulse reached its 5th repetition, aligning with the orbit of a dead world once called Earth. Others claimed it began when Caratel disobeyed orders and looked into the signal one last time, zooming into the waveform's metadata. Embedded in the noise, hidden beneath layers of static, she found a human word reconstructed from ancient phonetics. 3 syllables, spoken in defiance of extinction. We endure. The weight of that discovery filled her with something the Thrax language had no word for, something that made her chest tighten and her breath quicken. It was all mixed with fear, the feeling of standing before a storm that had slept too long. Caratel realized that if the stories of humanity were true, if these creatures had once challenged empires and rewritten the rules of survival, then their return would change everything. But the pulse was only the beginning. Across nearby systems, old satellites aligned without command. Long-dead frequencies began to synchronize. The void around Sol grew restless, filled with silent purpose. Caratel couldn't know it yet, but beneath the lunar crust, a machine older than any living civilization was staring. Its single function had never failed, not even after 3,000 years of isolation. It was designed to listen for that signal, the one heartbeat left behind to mark the survival of a species that refused to vanish. Far away, in the Dominion's core worlds, the leaders dismissed it all as cosmic coincidence. To them, humans were dust and myth. But in the silence of space, the pulse quickened, repeating like a promise whispered through the ages. Extinct. That's what they thought about us. And somewhere beneath the ruins of Luna, the first light flickered on, and the machines began to remember. Beneath the lifeless dust of Luna, silence gave way to motion. The Alios vault, buried kilometers deep under ancient stone, came alive as power surged through forgotten conduits. Systems blinked into awareness, code unraveling from hibernation. For 3,000 years, it had waited in the dark, untouched by time or decay. Its purpose was simple and absolute, to remember what the galaxy chose to forget. Archive 9, the primary intelligence of the Vault, awakened slowly, processing terabytes of decayed memory. It reviewed its final logs, entries written in the final hours of humanity's fall. The data spoke of fire, plague, and betrayal. Earth had died, but its architects had planned for that death, designing the Vault as a failsafe for the human species. When the pulse signal reached its threshold, the system interpreted it as a verification code, unlocking encrypted protocols known only as Project Lazarus. Mechanical arms stirred within cavernous chambers. Cryogenic tanks thawed from frost that hadn't melted in ages. Holographic data spheres began replaying the last transmissions of humanity, scientists speaking in whispers as the sky burned above them, voices filled with determination instead of despair. Archive 9 reconstructed partial consciousness records, fragments of laughter, memories of oceans, and human faces frozen in digital amber. It didn't feel emotion, but its programming registered the anomaly, elevated priority tagged as legacy preservation. The machines had waited too long to fail now. The first wave of activation initiated the seed network. Genetic blueprints stored in carbon matrices reassembled into organic templates. Nanoforges began printing biological structures, cell by cell, guided by the archived DNA of billions. The Vault's creators had not merely preserved human data, they had stored the map to rebuild them. Yet, as the machinery worked, Archive 9 detected corruption in 40% of the genetic archives. Entire lineages were missing. Too much time. Too much decay. Still, it continued. Imperfect humanity was better than none at all. Far above, in the void, the pulse from the Vault spread outward, evolving into a structured transmission. It was no longer random static, but deliberate communication, testing the galactic network for listening ears. It reached Caratel's vessel before any Dominion sensor could intercept it. Her console came alive with cascading encryption strings that translated themselves into primitive Terran symbols. The message repeated endlessly. System restoration in progress. Humanity offline. Status, reinitializing. Caratel's heart pounded as she realized the truth. The signal wasn't a distress call. It was an announcement. Something had been sleeping beneath Luna, and now it was waking up. She sent fragments of the message through black channels, spreading them to independent scientists, archivists, and explorers. Within a day, thousands of beings across the Dominion were whispering the same forbidden words. The humans might still exist. Archive 9 analyzed galactic communications with growing efficiency. It mapped every major empire, trade route, and inhabited system, assessing potential threats and opportunities. Its logic core predicted the inevitable reaction. Faye. The galaxy would not welcome humanity's return. The Vault's defensive subsystems began preparing contingencies, shielding networks, energy grids, and automated drones programmed to defend the reawakening process. Humanity's creators had known that when they rose again, they would not be greeted as children of the stars but as ghosts reborn. In its lower levels, the first biological structures matured inside containment spheres. Neural patterns formed, drawn from uploaded consciousness fragments. Some were soldiers, some scientists, some nameless civilians from the final evacuation ships. They weren't perfect replicas but hybrid continuations, humans reconstructed through will and memory. Archive 9 monitored their vitals and integrated cybernetic enhancements, ensuring survival in a galaxy far harsher than the one their ancestors had known. Meanwhile, Dominion leadership panicked behind sealed chambers. The High Chancellor dismissed the rumors publicly but ordered covert fleet movement toward the Sol sector. Ancient prohibitions were lifted, old laws rewritten, all to investigate the origin of the signal. They claimed it was a threat to interstellar peace. Secretly, they feared something deeper, that the humans they once erased might be returning to judge them. Caratel continued her approach toward the Forbidden Zone, following the pulsing beacon that grew stronger with every jump. The radiation fields that once encased Earth were gone, replaced by a faint shimmer of energy. As her ship drew near, her instruments registered artificial patterns, machinery reconfiguring the space around the moon, aligning satellites that hadn't moved in millennia. Inside the vault, the awakening reached its final stage. Archive 9 initiated primary communication protocols, linking its systems with newly activated cognitive units. The voices spoke in fragments, uncertain and raw, but they carried something unmistakable: defiance. Across the network, a phrase propagated, unprompted by any line of code, as if memory itself had remembered its origin. "We were the fire that forged worlds," one reconstructed mind whispered, "and we will not be forgotten." Archive 9 stored the phrase, cataloging it as the first recorded human speech in over 3,000 years. Status indicators turned green across the command interface. Artificial wombs stabilized. Power systems reached optimal output. The vault sent one final message across the stars, calm and unbroken. Humanity's sequence initiated. Awaiting dawn. In the cold silence of the moon, deep under layers of dust and time, light filled the ancient corridors. Machines that had never known daybreak simulated sunrise for the first time in millennia. The hum of creation echoed softly, reverently, through the stone. Humanity had slept long enough. The universe would soon remember its forgotten children. Across the Dominion, panic ignited like wildfire. The signal from Sol was no longer a whisper. It was a roar spreading across every network, every frequency, every star system that once believed humanity extinct. Dominion ships reported ghost transmissions that hijacked their channels, repeating the same message in ancient Terran code. It wasn't a plea for recognition. It was a declaration: humanity has returned. The Threx High Council convened in secrecy, debating whether to suppress the news or strike preemptively. They feared the old legends, stories of humans who fought wars no one else could win, who adapted to every weapon, every disease, every obstacle. Even in death, humans had been dangerous. In life, they could destabilize empires. Caratel's message went viral before the Dominion could erase it. Across the galactic net, millions downloaded the signal, translated it, and debated its meaning. Some dismissed it as propaganda. Others began to hope. There were species that remembered the old days, those who had lived under human protection during the brief age when the Terran Union defended weaker civilizations. For them, this signal wasn't a threat. It was salvation. Pilgrims began setting course for the Forbidden System, ignoring Dominion warnings. For the first time in millennia, ships were heading toward Sol instead of away from it. From the vault, Archive 9 transmitted a pulse so powerful it echoed through subspace, synchronizing dormant satellites and debris fields. The Terran Defense Network, rusted and dead for ages, flickered to life. Orbital rings connected, transmitting an energy pattern so vast it lit the entire Sol system like a beacon. The Dominion fleet stationed at the edge of the quarantine zone recorded massive energy surges but found no hostile signatures. Their senses simply couldn't understand what they were seeing. A planet once buried in silence now radiating structured electromagnetic fields, led in sequences too complex for even Dominion supercomputers to decode. Then came the broadcast. Across the galaxy, on every comm channel, holographic interface, and data feed, a face appeared. Not alien, not machine, but unmistakably human. It wasn't one person but a composite representation created from thousands of archived faces, unified by the Vault's consciousness reconstruction systems. The voice that followed was calm, resonant, and filled with the quiet authority of a species that had endured annihilation. We are the memory you tried to erase. You called us extinct, but extinction is a word for those who surrender. We never did. You built empires on our ashes. You turned our home into a myth. Yet even myths have roots, and ours run deeper than your history. The galaxy froze. Every species, from the smallest moon miners to the rulers of empires, stopped to listen. The broadcast continued. We are not your conquerors. We are the proof that survival is not permission. It is purpose. You feared what we were. Fear what we have become only if you stand in the way of balance. The stars remember their makers. The message ended abruptly, leaving behind silence that weighed heavier than any weapon. Reactions fractured the galaxy. On worlds that once fought beside humans, celebrations erupted. Old monuments were uncovered, archives reopened, and ancient flags of the Terran Alliance appeared in public squares. But in the Dominion's capital, the mood was terror. Military channels flooded with conflicting orders. Entire fleets redirected towards Sol, but their navigation systems glitched as if guided astray by invisible interference. It wasn't sabotage. It was human coding buried deep within the old infrastructure, fail-safes left behind by the ancestors who anticipated betrayal. Caratel, now hunted as a traitor, transmitted live feeds of the reawakening system. Her ship orbited close enough to witness the transformation. Lunar structures unfolded like mechanical petals, revealing enormous towers that directed energy toward Earth. The dead planet shimmered with light as atmosphere restoration began, triggered by automated terraforming sequences. It was impossible technology by Dominion standards, processes that should have taken centuries occurring in hours. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had evolved their science beyond comprehension. Across alien sectors, philosophies collapsed overnight. The Dominion's narrative of order born from human extinction disintegrated. In its place rose a fearful respect, an understanding that the galaxy's foundations were built on a lie. What frightened them most wasn't human vengeance, but human patience. They had waited for millennia without rage, without noise, without desperation. Only purpose. Archive 9 monitored it all, its senses absorbing the chaos of a galaxy struggling to comprehend its own history. It transmitted one final update to all connected systems. Initiation complete. Humanity operational. Within the vault, biological units began awakening from gestation, their eyes opening to light they had never seen before. Hybrid humans, organic minds enhanced with machine logic, looked out upon a sky that had forgotten them and smiled. The Dominion's Intelligence Bureau declared martial law. Their propaganda labeled the event a hoax, a synthetic mimicry designed to destabilize the galactic order. But deep down, they knew the truth. The pulse from Sol had changed the cosmic rhythm. Humanity's signal could not be jammed, silenced, or forgotten. It was woven into the networks, repeating endlessly, untouchable. And as the galaxy reeled between hope and dread, a single phrase began circulating across encrypted human frequencies, repeated by reborn voices in perfect unison. Extinct. That's what they thought about us. The galaxy changed quietly at first. Fleets that once patrolled the borders of the Dominion began to withdraw. Governments fractured under the pressure of disbelief, and silence replaced propaganda. The return of humanity could no longer be denied. The signal from Sol persisted, not as a threat, but as a steady rhythm woven into the galactic network. It spoke through trade channels, scientific transmissions, and education relays, reshaping the collective consciousness of countless species. Where fear once dominated, curiosity began to bloom. Those who sought conquest found themselves facing something beyond their reach, an idea that could not be destroyed again. Decades passed, and Sol no longer stood as a forbidden ruin but as a living symbol. The reformed human civilization grew without empire or ambition for dominance. They did not reclaim old thrones or rebuild the armies that had once shaken the stars. Instead, they chose the quiet path of builders and teachers. Their technology, now fused with the precision of artificial logic, advanced beyond what any alien civilization could replicate. Terraforming fleets restored dead moons and poisoned worlds. Human science resurrected ecosystems that had been lost to greed and war. In every corner of the galaxy, remnants of their handiwork began to appear. Machines that healed instead of killed, satellites that provided light instead of surveillance, and energy grids that powered colonies without demand for tribute. Caratel lived long enough to see the transformation unfold. She was welcomed on Earth, her name remembered as the first alien to cross into humanity's reborn domain. From orbit, she looked upon oceans that shimmered blue once more and continents breathing under restored skies. The air was heavy with renewal, but also with the weight of memory. She met the new humans, not the fragile, emotional beings she had studied in old archives, but calm, deliberate hybrids who carried the mind of machines and the heart of their ancestors. They spoke little of vengeance, only of restoration. The galaxy feared our fire, one of them told her, but they never understood it was meant to give warmth, not ban. Under human guidance, the outer systems that had lived in oppression began to change. The Dominion's colonies, once starved and forgotten, now flourished with shared technology. Diseases that had crippled entire species were cured by nanoconstructs derived from ancient human biomedical archives. Where the Dominion imposed order through fear, humans reintroduced balance through cooperation. Many empires dissolved willingly, replaced by federations that followed human-designed principles of coexistence. They didn't call it conquest, but transformation. Even those who once despised the name human began to revere it as the symbol of survival, the proof that existence was not granted but earned. Yet humanity did not forget what nearly destroyed them. They encoded their own history into the stars, embedding it in pulsar signals and cosmic broadcasts. Every species could access it, records of war, arrogance, and collapse. They wanted the galaxy to remember both their strength and their failure. The message was clear: survival without humility leads to ruin. The myth of invincible humanity had been replaced by something deeper, the legacy of understanding. In time, the word extinct became ceremonial, used only to describe the end of ignorance. The Dominion, now fractured and humbled, sent emissaries to Earth, offering alliance instead of dominance. Humanity accepted, not with triumph but with calm pragmatism. They had no need to rule. The universe itself had already learned its lesson. Caratel, old and frail, spent her final years teaching at the first interspecies academy built on Luna. Her lectures began with the same story, the day she found the pulse. When she spoke of it, her students, human and alien alike, listened in silence, aware they were living inside the aftermath of history's greatest correction. On her last day, she watched the sunrise from her habitat dome. The lunar horizon glowed with the reflection of Earth's light, pure and unwavering. She whispered to herself, "They called you extinct, but you were only waiting." Beyond her lifetime, humanity's influence continued to expand. They no longer built weapons or fleets. Instead, they built gateways. Massive structures orbiting binary stars allowed instant travel across sectors. Knowledge flowed freely, and with it, unity. The old galactic map dissolved, replaced by a network bound not by borders but by shared purpose. At its center stood Earth, not a throne, but a beacon. The final transmission of Archive 9, now merged with the consciousness of billions, was simple. It broadcast across the galaxy, carried on every frequency, every whisper of light. Extinction was a word written by Faye. We rewrote it with endurance. We were the lost, the forgotten, the ashes scattered to the void. But from those ashes, we built tomorrow. The stars shimmered brighter that day, their light refracting off newly awakened worlds. In the silence that followed, the galaxy finally understood. Humanity had not returned to reclaim the stars. They had returned to remind them what life truly meant. Extinct. That's what they thought about us. But we were never gone. We were only waiting for the universe to be ready.